Hello everyone. Before we start this video, I just wanted to take a quick minute and explain what this is. So many of you have been asking where the How It Really Looks videos has gone lately. And basically, to make those videos, I use a software called FreeFarsight. That's the program that makes these camera angles turn into these camera angles. And I didn't want to make any How It Really Looks videos until that software was updated. Now, a long time has passed and the software still doesn't work for Legion, and I really don't want to wait any longer to make my exploration videos. That is why I'm launching this new series, which I will call Smoke and Mirrors. It is going to be a bit different from the How It Really Looks videos, but I hope you will like it anyway. And if you really like the How It Really Looks videos, don't worry, I am not scrapping the series. Smoke and Mirrors is just a temporary replacement until we can use FreeFarsight again. But anyway, let's get started. Sit back and enjoy as we look behind the illusions of Warcraft. This is the Smoke and Mirrors of the Emerald Nightmare raid. The Emerald Nightmare is the first raid introduced in World of Warcraft Legion. In here we cross the borders between reality and dream as we climb the tree Shaladrasil in our pursuit of scenarios. As we progress through the raid, we are going to visit a lot of different locations across Azeroth, and to achieve this, the map is made up of several small subzones, and they are all connected and accessed with portals. Of course, you are not moving between the real Moonglade and Grizzly Hills. All of these zones that you visit have been put together in one single map file that makes up the Emerald Nightmare raid. This is what a map actually looks like. The dark blue color is just empty void, while the different playable areas are scattered around like islands in a sea of nothingness. The Clutch of the Nightmare, which is where the raid begins and where you fight the first boss, Nithandra, is located right here on the map. There's also an exact copy of it here, which is probably used for some kind of phasing or other technical reason. So the Clutch of the Nightmare is also the lair of Nithandra, the dragon who was charged with the task of guarding Shaladrasil. It is basically just one circular area, entirely infested with a red corruption that will be a widespread theme throughout the raid. It is kind of an odd design decision to take something called the Emerald Nightmare and then paint it red, but it is just one of those things that we will have to go with. The Clutch of the Nightmare continues up a spiraling pathway and takes us into the core of the nightmare, which essentially is a portal hub that we use to travel between the zones. Now, while these two areas looks unsettling, they get real nightmarish when studied from afar. Here you see the spiraling pathway that comes out of the bulk that contains the Clutch of the Nightmare and continues up to the core of the nightmare that makes up the crown of this floating monstrous abomination of a tree. The entire thing is floating around unsettling in this skybox of burning crimson, and it all just looks so broken. The first of the zones we are going to look at is Ungoro Crater. On the Emerald Nightmare map, this zone is located down in the far left corner. The playable area is just a narrow pathway up until the boss encounter, which is a corrupted tree with a nightmarish vortex swirling above. And while this looks pretty epic and grand seen from below, the illusion quickly fades if we change our perspective and instead study the scene from above. Now we realize that the menacing vortex is nothing more than a small cone placed just above the tree, and around this area, the rest of Ungoro Crater seems to be okay, at least if you don't count the heavy fog and the fact that all the water has dried out. Around the crater there is really nothing interesting to find. The cutout corners of the adjacent zones still remain, but there are no objects left, which leaves them as nothing more than empty shells. This becomes most apparent in the top right corner, where we find nothing but naked sand and cliffs, in the spot where the mighty Sulfurak should stand. The next zone we'll take a look at is Grizzly Hills. On the Emerald Nightmare map, we have to go from Ungoro Crater on the bottom left side all the way over to the bottom right. A huge part of the map has been cut out and brought into the Emerald Nightmare, but most of it is just to be used as scenery. This short pathway makes up the entire playable area. It is a short linear road from the portal to the boss room. The rest of the map is the scenery you see while running along this path. In this version of Grizzly Hills, the corrupted world tree, Warcraft, still stands. Blizzard have used literal smoke here to make sure we can't see any details from the playable area. We are basically only allowed to see the treetops of Grizzly Hills. When we look behind the smoke and mirrors, we can see that the corrupted world tree is not even attached to the ground. It is basically just floating above the tree line, and the smoke is there to cover it all up. And the smoke itself does not cover the zone, it has just been placed right around the playable area, as you can see here. And the menacing corrupted roots that break through the fog to reach high up in the sky are, as you can expect, not as menacing beyond the illusion. They have just been placed down without any regard for how they look on the ground, which has left a very broken looking result. I find it so fascinating how a little smoke can be used to hide these things to create this amazing jaw-dropping scenery. Alright, so next up we are going to look at the Emerald Dreamway. On the map we find it here on the right side, quite a bit north of Grizzly Hills. This is where we fight the Dragons of Nightmare, and it is basically a more corrupted version of the Dreamway that druids use to travel around Azeroth faster. In that version the corruption has only spread to one area, while in here the Nightmare has infested everything. The boss encounter takes place in the west area of the Dreamway, while the eastern area is sealed off and unused. There are 4 active portals here, which are part of a raid mechanic exclusive to the mythic difficulty of the encounter. Here, a small team needs to go through the portals and take down a mob called the Lumbering Mindgorger. And since we are going through the portals, the encounters are obviously taking place on the other side. The portals lead to the original places where these dragons used to be world bosses in Vanilla WoW. In other words, Serradane, the Dreambow, the Bow Shadow, and the Twilight Grove. If we look at the map of the Emerald Nightmare, we find these faces in the very center of the map file. From left to right, we have Bow Shadow, Serradane, Twilight Grove, and Dreambow. The encounters are being fought just outside the portals, but of course the entire subzones have been pasted in so that we get the impression that the entire area is there. It really is quite ambitious to have 4 whole subzones added to a raid map for one single mechanic that only appears in one difficulty of the encounter. But I guess that shows Blizzard's devotion and dedication to make the best and most immersive raids possible. Outside the Dreamway there is really nothing to find. The entire area is surrounded by trees, and beyond them are just a flat surface, and even that only continues for a little while before it cuts off and the void begins. The next location we will take a look at is Mulgore. On the map, we find it right here in the top left corner. While the entire zone of Mulgore has been pasted into the raid map, the playable area only makes up a small part to the east of Bluff. The city itself has been ripped out of the ground, and the pieces of it can be seen hovering in the air. We never get to actually enter Bluff, and we also only get to see it from the east side. Because of this, it is only here that work has been put in, and if we went around, we would instantly dispel the smoke and mirrors. Now we can see the towers floating in mid-air and massive gaping holes straight down into the void. We also see the markings in the ground where the city originally stood. Here all the buildings have been removed and the ground has been flattened out. The rest of the zone has been stripped of everything but the trees. So if you for example went to Bloodhoof village, all you would find is the traces in the ground where the buildings used to be. Around the entire zone, we see these corrupted roots rise high up in the sky. As expected, when we go behind the mountains, we find that these have been placed down just like in Grizzly Hills, and they are either broken or floating in mid-air. The next zone we are going to is Moonglade. It can be found right here in the top right side of the map. As you can see, there are actually 2 Moonglades here. That could either be something that is left here since development, or it could be there for some technical reasons. The zone itself is a really twisted experience. The playable area takes place in the center, while the rest of the map has been bent upward. So while Moonglade has not been torn apart like Thunder Bluff, it is now leaning in 45 degrees into the nightmarish vortex that has broken through the lake. It is a very Inception-like feeling actually, seeing an entire zone getting bent like this until it is leaning in 90 degrees upwards. When all of these zones have been conquered, players can face off against the last boss Xavius, and this encounter takes place in the Rift of Aln. On the map we find it right here to the east of the Dragons of Nightmare faces. Now, of all areas within the Emerald Nightmare, this must be the least impressive looking one. It is basically a grey surface surrounded by a grey mist under a grey glooming skybox. And if we look behind the smoke and mirrors of this place and see how it really looks behind the grey mist, we can see that it is just a flat grey square. Now, if that is not a visually depressing ending to a beautifully designed raid, I don't know what is. And finally, there is one more area we have yet to explore. After Xavius has been defeated, we get to enter the Uncorrupted Emerald Dream. On the map file, it is found here, to the west of the Dragons of Nightmare zones. It is a small, verdant area, about the same size as the Emerald Dreamway. Among the lush trees and colorful flowers, we find the emerald statues that has been in the game file since Alpha Vanilla in 2003, and it is quite amazing that they actually decided to use these without even updating them. I think this brings a huge sense of recognition and nostalgia towards the Emerald Dream that many of us that have been waiting for it for several years wouldn't have felt if they redesigned these statues. At the end of the playable area, invisible walls prevent us from going any further. However, it looks like the Emerald Dream just goes on and on, but this is of course only an illusion. The dream cuts off right behind the things you can see from the playable area, and then the void begins. So, this is all that makes up the Emerald Nightmare raid. In this video, I have given you a tour around the map file. We have stepped behind the smoke and mirrors that Blizzard have put up and seen how this raid was designed and how it really looks without its makeup. I really hope you enjoyed this. This is different from my How It Really Looks videos. The biggest difference, of course, is that I have narrated this one, but also since this is more of a guided tour than a free-flying exploration. If you enjoyed this, I will absolutely continue to cover Legion content in this way until Free Farsight is updated. So let me know in the comments down below if that is something that you want me to do. And thank you for watching the video. Again, if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want more Warcraft from a different perspective, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. As always, a huge extra thank you to my amazing supporters on Patreon. You have no idea how much your contribution means. Okay, I will be back with a new video very soon, but until then everyone, take care.